Tanya Williams was just an ordinary mother living a quiet life in her neighborhood, working long hours as a nurse to provide for her 2 children. She had built a life full of routine, love, and small joys, never imagining that one day, in a matter of minutes, everything she had worked for could be torn apart. One afternoon, as she arrived at her daughter Naomi's school to pick her up, the familiar streets suddenly felt hostile. Police officers stepped out from behind parked cars and approached her with a seriousness she had never seen before. Within moments, she was handcuffed in front of her children, accused of a crime she didn't commit. The allegations were shocking. A local store had been robbed, and eyewitnesses claimed they saw a woman matching her description, a woman of her build and age. Her daughter cried, clinging to her father Marcus, confused and terrified, unable to understand why their mother was being taken away. Tanya protested vehemently, insisting she was innocent, but her words seemed to disappear into the cold air of authority that surrounded her. The officers were unmoved, their eyes scanning the crowd, noting the whispers of neighbors who had begun to gather, and recording everything as if confirming her guilt with their presence. In the police station, the questions came fast and harsh, a barrage of assumptions and suspicion, every word underscored by the fact that she was a black woman in a system that often judged before it listened. Every attempt Tanya made to explain her whereabouts was met with skepticism. Every proof she offered dismissed or overlooked. It was as if the very color of her skin had already sealed her fate, painting her as guilty in a world eager to simplify complex truths. Friends called, confused and horrified, but even their disbelief seemed not enough to sway the officials. The store manager had insisted she was the one they saw on camera, and the video footage, grainy and indistinct, appeared to confirm the accusation at first glance. Tanya's world, which had been built on care and responsibility, collapsed into a whirlwind of fear, shame, and uncertainty. Her husband Marcus tried to intervene, pacing the halls of the police station, demanding answers, pleading for reason, but he too felt powerless against the machinery of the law that had already set its judgment. It was in that moment, as the minutes stretched into hours, that Tanya understood how fragile security could be when prejudice is allowed to steer decisions meant to be impartial. The children, waiting outside with a teacher who had tried to shield them from the worst, clung to each other, feeling the first tremors of trauma that could leave invisible scars for years to come. Tanya's mind raced, thinking of her daughter Naomi's wide, trusting eyes and her youngest son, who was unaware but would sense the tension and pain radiating from everyone around him. She thought of the life they had built, of the quiet pride she took in doing the right thing, and of the cruel irony that doing everything right had done nothing to protect her now. In the midst of this chaos, she wondered how quickly a person's world could be reshaped by assumptions, by bias, by the weight of stereotypes that often go unchallenged. Tanya's case seemed almost routine to those in positions of authority. Just another file, another black woman accused. Another story where the system assumed guilt first and asked questions later. But for her, it was life-altering. Tanya began to prepare mentally for the courtroom, for the possibility that she might be treated as guilty simply because of who she was. She realized that to fight, she would need more than truth. She would need determination, resilience, and allies who could see past the color of her skin to the facts at hand. Before her first hearing, she received a call from local reporter Jenna Ortiz, a woman determined to uncover injustice wherever it hid. Jenna promised to review the footage, to speak with witnesses, to investigate the inconsistencies that everyone else had ignored. Tanya felt a flicker of hope amid the despair. As the courtroom approached, every step felt like walking into a storm. The prosecutor, Linda Green, a woman known for her ambition and strict adherence to procedure, seemed intent on securing a conviction rather than seeking truth. Judge Harold Thompson, a seasoned jurist with a reputation for rigidity, presided over the case, his demeanor adding to the tension in the room. Tanya's lawyers presented her alibi, timelines, and character witnesses, Yet the weight of societal prejudice pressed down, threatening to overshadow even the clearest evidence. At home, Marcus tried to comfort the children, explaining as best he could that their mother was fighting to come home, that the system might be slow, but they would endure. Naomi, struggling to understand why people could doubt someone so kind and hardworking, whispered questions about fairness that left her father speechless. It was in those whispered questions, in the frightened eyes of her children, that Tanya found the deepest source of resolve. She would not allow fear or bias to define her or her family's future. And now, viewers, I want to ask you, where are you watching from? What city, what town is listening to Tanya's story right now? Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and give this video a like, because the story ahead is one of struggle, courage, and justice. You will see how the battle for fairness is waged when the odds are stacked against someone simply because of who they are. As Tanya's case unfolded, small cracks in the assumption of her guilt began to appear. Witness statements conflicted, surveillance footage revealed inconsistencies, and Jenna's investigation uncovered details the prosecution had overlooked. Slowly, the narrative that had painted Tanya as guilty began to shift, but the fight was far from over. Every court date brought renewed stress, every interaction with officials a reminder that bias still existed, that being a black mother in a world that so often judges by color rather than character carried its own unique burdens. Tanya met with her lawyers late into the nights, reviewing every piece of evidence, rehearsing questions, preparing to face the scrutiny of the courtroom again and again. Marcus provided support, but the emotional weight was immense. The children clung to their mother in short visits, their innocence a constant reminder of what was at stake. Jenna's reports began to reach a wider audience, adding public pressure and shining a light on the inconsistencies that had kept Tanya in the crosshairs of injustice. As the community began to notice, some neighbors offered support, speaking out about the error, while others remained skeptical, influenced by initial impressions and assumptions. Tanya learned the hard reality of how fragile reputation can be when society allows prejudice to shape perception. And yet, through this struggle, she discovered resilience within herself she had not fully known. She realized that fighting for justice was not only about clearing her name, but about protecting her children from a world willing to accept unfairness and punishment without proof. The first half of Tanya's story ends with her temporary release from custody, the children rushing into her arms, but the tension remains. The courtroom, the prosecutor, and the judge still hold sway over her fate, and the battle for truth has only just begun. The fight is far from over, but Tanya's courage, her determination, and the support of those willing to stand with her offer a glimmer of hope in a situation that once seemed hopeless. The relief of being temporarily free was immense for Tanya, yet the shadow of the accusation still hung over her life. Every phone call, every news story reminded her that the fight for justice was far from over. Her children clung to her tightly, but even their embrace could not erase the fear that had settled into their hearts. Marcus tried to remain calm and supportive, but Tanya could see the strain in his eyes, the worry of a husband who felt powerless against a system designed to doubt before it listens. Jenna Ortiz, the journalist, continued her investigation relentlessly, uncovering inconsistencies in the store's security footage and speaking to witnesses who had been overlooked. One witness admitted they had misidentified Tanya, mistaking her for someone else entirely. Another piece of evidence showed the true perpetrator's clothing, captured from a different camera angle, clearly not matching Tanya's appearance. Tanya's lawyers presented this new evidence to the court, pushing back against the prosecution's insistence on moving forward. Yet Linda Green, the prosecutor, refused to concede easily, arguing that the testimony of the eyewitnesses was sufficient to maintain the case. Judge Harold Thompson remained stern and unyielding, his demeanor reflecting years of habit that often favored procedure over empathy. Tanya's anxiety grew with each hearing. She was determined to show the court that her innocence was undeniable, But she also worried about the psychological toll this ordeal was taking on Naomi and her younger son. Naomi, once cheerful and trusting, now asked endless questions about fairness and punishment, unable to reconcile the world's harshness with her mother's truth. Tanya knew she had to protect not only her freedom, but also the innocence of her children. The community's reaction was mixed. Some neighbors, learning the truth through Jenna's reporting, expressed outrage at the injustice Tanya had suffered, offering support and encouragement. Others, influenced by initial assumptions, remained skeptical, their minds clouded by ingrained prejudice. Tanya realized that fighting for justice was not only about the courtroom, it was also about reclaiming her reputation and dignity in the eyes of those around her. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Public attention, fueled by Jenna's reporting, brought pressure to the prosecutor's office. Linda Green faced questions she could no longer ignore, and the inconsistencies in the evidence became undeniable. The turning point came when a final review of the surveillance footage conclusively identified the true culprit, clearing Tanya of all charges. In court, the evidence was presented, and the atmosphere shifted. The judge, acknowledging the overwhelming proof of her innocence, dismissed the charges. Tanya's relief was profound, yet tempered by the knowledge of how close she had come to losing everything she held dear. She returned home to her children, who ran into her arms with tears and laughter mixed together, a chaotic but healing expression of joy and relief. Marcus held Tanya tightly, both of them understanding that their life had been irrevocably changed, but grateful for the chance to rebuild. The story of Tanya Williams serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of bias and the importance of persistence. It shows how prejudice, especially against Black women, can distort justice and put families through unimaginable pain. Yet it also demonstrates the power of resilience, evidence, and the support of those willing to challenge unfairness. Tanya's battle was not just for her own freedom, but for the safety and dignity of her children, and through courage and determination, she managed to protect both. The neighborhood slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, but Tanya's experience left a mark. She became an advocate for awareness, speaking to others about the importance of standing up against prejudice and ensuring that the innocent are heard. The children, seeing their mother's strength, learned an invaluable lesson about courage and perseverance. Tanya's story resonates because it is painfully real, an ordinary person caught in extraordinary circumstances, facing a system that sometimes fails, yet refusing to be broken by it. It is a testament to human resilience and the enduring fight for fairness. Throughout this journey, Tanya realized that justice is not always immediate, and often the battle is long and exhausting. But truth and persistence can prevail even in the face of systemic bias. Every day after her release, Tanya returned to work, embraced her children, and rebuilt her life, carrying with her both the scars and the strength from her ordeal. The story challenges viewers to reflect on the real-life impact of prejudice, the fragility of innocence when confronted with systemic assumptions, and the courage required to fight for what is right. It calls on us to look beyond appearances, to question assumptions, and to support those who are unfairly judged by society. Tanya's experience shows that even when the system seems stacked against someone, determination, evidence, and allies can make all the difference. It encourages empathy, awareness, and action, reminding us that injustice anywhere is a call for courage everywhere. A journey from accusation to exoneration is not just a personal victory. It is a symbol of hope for all who face similar struggles. And now, dear viewers, if Tanya's story has touched you, if her courage has moved you, I ask you to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Share her story, talk about it, and remember that standing up against prejudice is something we can all do. Thank you for watching and for being part of the fight for justice alongside Tanya Williams.